Heya Cryptozens, tonight's show. The CFTC goes after Ooki DAO. More parties join the Celsius bankruptcy case. And Helium scraps the Helium network. It's 10 p.m. Pacific. The date is September 23rd, 2022. Welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter. My name is Nicodemus, and I'll be your host. The cover model, mascot, and co-host for this podcast is Tex. And together, we take a nightly look at the crypto, NFT, and metaverse space and the industry that surrounds it. Now, if you have questions or comments on this show, come find us on Twitter or email us at nick@cryptoovernighter.com. And keep in mind, nothing in this show should ever be considered financial advice. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission issued an order today, and this order settled charges against the protocol B0X. And so it was announced in a press release today that the CFTC hit founders Tom Bean and Kyle Kistner with a $250,000 in fines. This was in response to charges of offering illegal off-exchange trading of digital assets. The news release said, quote, illegal offering leveraged and margined retail commodity transactions in digital assets. Also, there were registration violations and failing to adopt a customer ID program as required by the Bank Secrecy Act. In addition to that, the CFTC also hit Ooki DAO with a civil enforcement action. Now, Ooki DAO is the successor to B0X. And so the CFTC has hit the DAO with the same charges as B0X. They're saying that the DAO operated the same protocol as B0X, which makes it guilty of, quote, violating the same laws as the respondents. In fact, the CFTC lined out this part of their case. They said Bean and Kistner said that they wanted to transfer B0X over to Ooki DAO, that it was going to be done to avoid crackdowns under the gray areas of DeFi. They said, quote, by transferring control to a DAO, B0X's founders touted to B0X community members the operations would be enforcement-proof, allowing the DAO to violate the CEA and CFTC regulations with impunity. Now, out of it, the CFTC is looking for restitution, disgorgement, monetary penalties, trading and registration bans, and injunctions against further violations, presumably with increased penalties for violating the law again. Gretchen Lowe is the acting director of enforcement, and she was talking about how the CFTC's enforcement actions today are part of a broader effort to protect U.S. customers. She said, quote, margined, leveraged, or financed digital asset trading offered to U.S. retail customers must occur on properly registered and regulated exchanges in accordance with all applicable laws and regulations. These requirements apply equally to entities with more traditional business structures as well as to DAOs. That said, there was some dissent. Some of that dissent came from within the CFTC. Summer Mersinger is a commissioner, and she posted her disagreement on the CFTC website. She said, quote, we cannot arbitrarily decide who is accountable for those violations based on an unsupported legal theory amounting to regulation by enforcement while federal and state policy is developing. Now, specifically, she was talking about how she supports the charges against the B0X founders, but she feels like regulators tread unknown ground when taking action against the members of a DAO that voted on governance proposals. She said, quote, I cannot agree with the Commission's approach of determining liability for DAO token holders based on their participation in governance voting for a number of reasons. This approach constitutes blatant regulation by enforcement by setting policy based on new definitions and standards never before articulated by the Commission or its staff, nor put out for public comment. And Commissioner Mersinger was not alone in her criticism. Jake Travinsky is a lawyer and is head of policy at the U.S. Blockchain Association. He was on Twitter when he was talking about this enforcement action. He said it might be the most egregious example of regulation by enforcement in the history of everything ever. He drew comparisons between the CFTC and the SEC. He said, quote, "We've complained at length about the SEC abusing this tactic, but the CFTC has put them to shame." He went on to talk about the CFTC and how this damages their reputation, especially among, quote, "those who care about the future of crypto in the United States." And he's not wrong. This is a really, really big reach, and I don't think administrative rules support their action. That said, it does damage their reputation. I'm not sold on that. In fact, it looks like the CFTC might end up being entrusted with even more power in the near future. Here's what I mean. We've talked a number of times about the Stabenow-Boozman legislation. This is legislation that's currently in the Senate, and this bill would make the CFTC the primary regulator of the U.S. cryptocurrency space. Well, that legislative effort got a huge boost forward today. This was an important procedural steps that happened on Thursday, because that's when a member of the House of Representatives put forward a bill that's parallel to the version going through the Senate. It was put through by Representative Sean McPatrick Maloney, a Democrat out of New York, and he is the chairman of the Commodities Exchanges, Energy, and Credit Subcommittee. He said, quote, "It is essential that we have robust oversight and regulation so that we may provide strong customer protections." Now, at this point, I am not hopeful that this legislation will get through. They did have a meeting on the Senate side last week in an attempt to get this bill across the finish line by the end of this congressional session. They changed the language, even though that meant the definitions and the distinctions between crypto commodities aren't quite as sharp as they could be. But the fact is, there just isn't a lot of time to get the bill out there for floor vote. And then Maloney's bill has much the same path ahead. First, it would have to make it out of the House Agriculture Committee, and then to the floor for a vote. Now, running bills in parallel like this is more efficient, because it means it'll get sent to the president's desk faster because there's less work to do in reconciliation. But the fact is, there just isn't a lot of time. At the time of writing, the global crypto market cap is $942 billion. That's down 0.05%. The top 5 cryptos by market cap are Bitcoin down 0.9%, Ethereum up 0.38%, Tether, USDC, and Binance Coin up 0.43%. So there's a law firm that is representing groups of Celsius investors. These are investors that are holders of preferred equity in Celsius. And this group has filed a motion with the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Southern District of New York. They want to appoint a committee that would represent their interests in Celsius's bankruptcy case. They want first dibs when the time comes to make parties whole. They're claiming that the bankruptcy process is too favorable for retail customers. Their words, not mine. So yesterday, lawyers with the international law firm Milbank requested the appointment of what's called an official preferred equity committee. And the idea is that this committee would represent certain Celsius shareholders. These would be Series A and Series B shareholders. In the filing, they say equity holders, quote, urgently require their own fiduciary, that they need this representation in court right along with the Celsius debtors and an unsecured creditors committee. They said, quote, the need for a fiduciary to pursue the equity holders' interests is particularly critical when one considers the practical realities of these cases. There are only two groups of real economic stakeholders, the retail customers and the equity holders. And so they feel like they're not going to get due consideration, that the unsecured creditors are going to work to get as much value as they can, and that the debtors have made it clear that they consider the unsecured creditors as to be their partner. And so they feel like this official preferred equity committee is needed to keep the reorg from adopting a plan that violates the bankruptcy code. That if they don't, the case will be unfairly skewed to the detriment of equity holders. They feel that to be fair to the equity holders, they should be put at the front of the line when proceeds from the sale of GK8 as well as Celsius mining operations come around. So there's going to be a hearing on this motion, and that is scheduled for October 6th. October 6th is also the day that the court is due to decide whether Celsius will be allowed to sell some stablecoins to generate liquidity, basically to keep them afloat. This action was taken on behalf of shareholders who poured out around $750 million in a Series B funding just before Celsius tanked. Another thing about this motion, it would cap claims at the US dollar value as it was on the day of the bankruptcy petition date. Now, here's what they're after. If they cap claims, and if the value of crypto goes up over time, the upside would end up going to the equity holders. If, however, it goes down, customers are the ones who would get hurt. So, yeah, I don't see that motion making them any friends among the investors because they're trying to put investors ahead of retail. That said, another party has joined the case against Celsius. Stephen Manning is the Assistant Attorney General for the state of Washington, and he asked Judge Glenn, who is the judge in charge of this case, he asked to be admitted to the case on behalf of the state of Washington, specifically on behalf of the Department of Financial Institutions. Back in June, Washington joined securities regulators from 4 other states in an investigation into Celsius, because while the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission had been assuming regulatory authority over crypto in D.C., the states have a role to play as well. And in fact, Washington took a solid approach in regulation. This came from a belief that the feds move too slow. The global NFT market cap is down 17.81%. Sales volume is down 7.88%. According to CoinMarketCap, the top 5 NFT collections by sales volume are Bored Apes, followed by CryptoPunks, Otherdeed, Mutant Apes, and Azuki. Now keep in mind, some of these collections have very volatile prices, so do your own research. On Thursday, the Helium Foundation made an announcement that they were moving their mainnet to the Solana blockchain. There was a proposal that was approved by a committee vote. And so what this means is that Helium's proof of coverage and data transfer mechanisms would be moved to Helium oracles. So voter turnout showed strong support for this proposal. 80% of the voters were in favor of Helium improvement proposal number 70, which is more than the 2/3 threshold required. Then Helium's tokens and governance would migrate to the Solana blockchain. This is believed to mean that more of the HNT token would be available for sub-DAO reward pools. It's also expected that this proposal will bring more consistent mining, more reliable data transfers, more utility for HNT tokens, and better ecosystem support. Nova Labs is the parent of Helium, and they signed an agreement with T-Mobile to launch Helium Mobile. Helium Mobile, as you might have guessed, is a crypto-powered mobile phone service where subscribers can earn crypto rewards. They get those rewards for doing things like sharing data about coverage quality, as well as finding dead spots in the Helium network. In order to get in on that, you would have to have a 5G device. Right now, there are over 900,000 hotspots using Helium, 2,500 of them with 5G capabilities in almost 900 U.S. cities. Solana, for its part, is known to be a place to build decentralized apps. They're trying to take that role from Ethereum. Right now, there are around 200 million transactions per day with 1 million users. Scott Siegel is the Chief Operating Officer of the Helium Foundation. He said, quote, Solana has a proven track record powering some of the world's most important decentralized initiatives, and they were an obvious choice for us to partner with. Moving to the Solana blockchain allows us to focus our efforts on scaling the network as opposed to managing the blockchain itself. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I hope you have an awesome weekend. I will see you here tomorrow night for Weekend Roundup. Take care of yourselves, but take care of each other too. See you tomorrow night.